2003 Nissan 350Z rear brake replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from To Automotive. I'm going to walk you through that process. I'm going to start by getting her up on the hoist here. If you're doing this at home, use floor jacks and jack stands. And go ahead and remove the rear wheels. This is a brake pad and machine rotor video, not a inspection video. We inspected this vehicle last week and came back today for the work. So I thought I'd walk you guys through the process. And so everything's already been mic'd and checked out already, and it's in good shape to machine. So we're gonna get started by removing the caliper bolts here. We'll remove both of them. So I went to take the caliper bolt out, and we can take the bottom one out, and it hits right here. So as it loosens up, it hits the control arm here, the lower control arm, and it won't allow it to come out. So what I'm gonna do is just take the top bolt, see it hits right there and it won't come out. So what you're going to do is just flip it back out of the way, and on the back side we're going to take the two 17mm bolts here off, one here and one at the top, take those off, and then take the whole cage assembly off as one, and then you can slide the caliper out. Okay, so after removing, is actually 19mm bolts, the two 19mm bolts on the caliper bracket here. Now the whole caliper assembly will slide off like so, and then you can slide the pin off. And now you can set this aside. We're gonna remove our rotor here. I also like to kind of set these up on this. Try not to let them hang. You can possibly damage these lines. So now we're gonna remove the rotor, and most likely they're gonna be stuck on there. So a little trick you can do is take a hammer like so, and right on the lip of the edge, try not to hit the studs, and try not to, round the edge of the rotor, but you give it a little whack, a few whacks, and it'll pop free. Now that we got the rotor off, we want to quickly inspect our emergency brake shoes and make sure they're in good shape, and they are. They got plenty of lining. They're not really a wearable item unless you leave the brake on, so they last like forever. So you just want to make sure that everything looks like it's in good working order, and in this case it does. So we're going to machine the rotors, and if you don't have access to a brake lathe, you can take it down to your local repair shop and have them do it for you. They usually charge a small fee, and it's worth machining. They're also most likely going to ask you what year, make, model the car is, so have that information, and they'll mic it out for you, and then like I said, they'll charge you a small fee. And if you're just replacing the rotors yourself, you'll just slip them on over the original hub, and then you'll check your adjustment for your park brake. It may be a little different because of the new rotor, different thickness or whatever. So you may have to adjust, your park brake inwards to get the rotor on. But okay, while we have our rotors machining over there, what we're going to do is we're going to disassemble the brake caliper cage here, and we're gonna take a close look at it, and clean. We're gonna clean the hardware. If it doesn't, a lot of times these come with new hardware, and sometimes the brake pad, depending on the quality of your pads you buy and stuff like that. In my case, it did not come with these, so I'm gonna clean these up and lube them up a little bit, and then put them back on. And we're also going to lube up the slide pins, and make sure that they're sliding back and forth freely, both of them. So I'm going to take a little wire brush to this and clean this out. So now that we've cleaned up the caliper hardware with a little wire brush and put them back on the bracket here, we want to take a little bit of brake caliper or grease that's designed specifically for brakes. This is called Seal Glide. They have other brands and stuff, but so they're like a silicone based grease, and they don't break down with heat. So what we're going to do is put a little tiny dab of that in the channel where the pads ride. I mean, they're very, very thin layer. If you build up too much grease on here, what'll happen is it'll build up dirt and grime, and it'll actually cause the brake pads to stick and not slide back and forth. After that, we're going to put a little grease on our slide pins and work that on there, and we'll put it in there and work it back and forth. And make sure that there's plenty of lubricant in the slides itself. Now that that prep work is done, we're gonna, after machining our rotors, we're gonna slide it on, and you're gonna check the adjustment. So you're gonna rotate it back and forth, and you want to feel a light drag. If it's not like that, you through the hole here, you can adjust the adjuster spoon for the park brake shoes. So this is the adjustment screw I'm talking about. You can adjust this. These are flip, depending on if somebody's done them before, they can be reversed back and forth, so you have to adjust them and kind of look at them and see if they're going in or out. So one way, if you adjust it up one way, it may work great, and if you adjust it the other way, it may, so you'll have to kind of play with that a little bit. And you could also like adjust it a couple clicks now, and then slide the rotor on and see how it feels. And then you can try to adjust it through the little hole, or you can keep pulling it on and off and keep adjusting. Now that we've got everything adjusted, one of the things I wanted to mention is try not to touch the surface of the rotors or the new brake pads with your hands, or get grease or on it. That's a known reason to cause squeaks after you're done. So the cleaner you can keep it, the better. So now we're going to put the caliper back together and assemble it. Okay, now that we're ready to go back together, one of the things you want to do is open the hood, take the cap off the master cylinder, and remove a little bit of brake fluid. If you have like a turkey baster, we have a little thing that sucks it out. And what we're going to do is compress the piston back in, but we're not going to open the bleeder screw. So I'm using my caliper tool here. It presses pistons in. But if you don't have this, C-clamp works really well, or a large pair of channel locks. So when you do this, you push the pistons back in, and it pushes the fluid back up into the master cylinder, and if it's too full, it'll overflow and spill all over the engine bay. That's why we remove a little bit. And so if you're having any issues or whatever, you can also open the bleeder screw and push it through, push the piston back in, and after you're done with the whole brake job, you'll have to bleed the brakes. So because of the lower control arm issue where we couldn't get the bolt to clear, we need to put our caliper cage back on the caliper itself first after we get the piston pushed in. So we're going to put that in like that, and then we're going to put it on, and we're going to start our bolts. But before we start our bolts, one tip I wanted to give you is take a little thread locker. This one happens to be made by Terminex, and put a little dab of thread locker on there. Loctite is another brand that makes these, because they don't have lock washers, so they can vibrate loose and back off, and the caliper can fall off or jam up in the wheel or whatever. So that to prevent that issue, we put a little thread locker on there, and it helps reduce the risk of them backing it back out. So now you're going to put your new brake pads in the after you tighten the bolts down. You're going to slip your new brake pads on, and if your brake pads didn't come with new shims, you may transfer the old shims over if they're in good shape. This particular one didn't have them. And also the little anti-squealer, or not but the little squealer that tells you when you need brakes, you want to make sure that that goes on the driver's side. It faces upwards. On the passenger side, it'll be upwards also. So there's a left and a right inner pad. So after you get that sorted out, what you want to do is take a little dab of grease, the special Seal Glide grease designed for brake caliper, and put it on the brake pads like so, just a thin layer, and you're going to do it on the inner and outer, on the back of the pads, and then slip the caliper on and start your bolt. Tighten that down, and you can put a little of that blue thread locker on this too. So now that you got the rotor and caliper all reassembled, you're gonna put your wheel back on, torque those down, and then you're gonna pump your brake pedal several times before you drive the car, and what that does is push the fluid back into and resets the caliper. And if you don't do that, when you go to hit the brakes the first time, the pedal will go straight to the floor, and you will have no brakes for a couple seconds. So you pump it up, and then you also want to recheck your brake fluid level, because we're playing with it, we're sucking some out, moving things around, so you need to double check your brake fluid level after you're done. And that will complete the job. I'm Brian Eslick from To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, and as always, it's my pleasure sharing my experience with you. Thank you again.